Israel has only been a state since 1948. Palestine is thousands of years old. It is one of the oldest sites in history. It's one of the oldest groups of people in history, and we are watching the genocide of them happen before our eyes. The IDF are taught to aim at children because this is how disgusting their mindset is. One dead Palestinian child is one less Palestinian adult to fight in the future. For everyone arguing that all of this started because of Hamas didn't exist until 1987, 20 years after the apartheid started, 20 years after the occupation. Hamas was born within the occupation as a means of resistance. This isn't the occupation isn't happening because of Hamas. The United States just came out in full support of Israel. Shocker. They basically fund the IDF. We send about $70 million of military aid to them every year. For what? That's our tax dollars going over there to fund an apartheid state. But yeah, don't ever try to argue with me against the fact that the United States supports apartheid. In fact, since the creation of Israel in 1946, and I say creation because it was simply created as a result of the United Nations not knowing what to do with a bunch of refugees. So Britain and the United States created Israel in 1946, and since 1946, the United States has sent over $260 billion, not million, to fund apartheid. And Britain, I will deal with you later, is everything the Palestinians are fighting for. Every single day they wake up in an open air prison with nothing to do but fight. That's it. That's all they have left. That's when you take everything away from someone, the only thing they have left is willpower. And sometimes you get a Nobel Peace Prize, and other times you get a bomb on your doorstep. That statistic alone should tell you everything you need to know about the quality of life in these refugee camps. 42% of the population is under 15 years old. What does that say about life expectancy? What does that say about quality of life? What does that tell you about everything that's happening there? For the longest time, I wasn't even allowed to ever step foot in Israel, and to be a child and be told that you're not allowed to enter a country because of where you were born. That makes the gears start going, like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Why? And then living through seeing the stress that it puts on everyone around you, and not really fully understand. Obviously, I have no concept of what geopolitical war and tension means as a like 8-year-old, but I do understand what it means to see my mom cry. There was one air raid that I remember very specifically, and it was when we were living in Beirut, and a little child's arm that lived on the floor that we live on got broken and torn out of the socket because we had to run down the stairs so fast to try and find a bunker and to get out of the buildings because we had no idea where it was going to hit, because we just knew they don't aim. They don't care what they hit. They just launch rockets and hope it hits something, and they actually are hoping that it hits civilians and causes as much damage as possible. So to be in that room waiting for all of this to end, having a child that was less than 1 years old crying because their shoulder has been ripped out of its socket, and us not being able to do anything, like that has been ingrained in my head my entire life. Having to pass through checkpoints was something that I always thought was like just a part of life. There was still checkpoints up to like the early 2000s in the South, and you feel the energy completely shift when we come up to these things. You feel the fear in people that you look to for comfort and security and reassurance, and to look to someone like a family member for that and not see it because they're scared at such a young age will leave an impression on you. And even though I had no idea why things were happening, I knew that things were happening and they were negatively affecting us. We moved to America, and honestly, not much changed. 9/11 happened the year that we moved here, and I started to see racism almost immediately as like my introduction to America. It wasn't until like maybe 5 years ago that I started to really grow and educate myself and learn to not play into those tropes or have
internal racism towards myself. Because that's all I ever knew. That's all I ever knew. Everyone in the world thinks Arabs are terrorists, and that was just fact to me. But also growing up here and seeing Arabs represented more in the media, and seeing that it was possible to also be an Arab of positive influence is why I'm so vocal, and why I will never back down, because I feel like I've lived through both. I've lived through what Zionism has done to the Middle East, and honestly the hand that Zionism has on racism in America.